and survived. These were pictures that I carried with me that would be given to the underground if you could contact them and be put on a passport to get you out of Germany. One that would be on a passport. Another passport photo that they could forge. That's so easy they forged. If I got out, chances are a blue-eyed man liable to make it, because most of these Germans had blue eyes. I could kind of match them. But thank God I never had to use them. This was the third photo. I carried about 5 or 6 of them with me, just in case. This is a picture of the crew and the ground crew after we landed after the 10th mission, which I guess wasn't a very nice one. And so we'll go over and hit from the left. The back row, the left, is Carl Sessions, the waist gunner, Max Fellman, Walter Burney, the bombardier, Lambertson, the navigator, Skritzmeyer, he doesn't come out too well, the co-pilot, what happened here? I run into trouble. I gotta go back. I button that time and threw it out of focus. So we go back over to Carl Sessions on the left, Max Fellman, Walter Burney, Lambertson, Skritzmeyer, myself, Spence Lohr, and the guy was a ground crew man. And down below, another one of the ground crew, I don't know who he was, and another man from ground crew, and then the pilot, Carl Hornbuckle, and then Shorty, the tail gunner, Grover C. Pickle, and another ground person. This was after our 10th mission. We don't look very happy. Now, Walter Burney, this man here, had a twin brother. They were both bombardiers. And while we were flying, they had turrets on the front of some bombers. His brother was in a turret. Well, he wasn't, before he got to the target. And a shell come up and blew the turret right out of the airplane right in front of him. They were twin brothers. And I can't imagine how that man felt. I returned to the United States the last of August 1944 on a French liner Louis Pasteur. It was a luxury liner converted to a troop ship. We had 1,000 German prisoners aboard, and we came across the Atlantic all alone. It took us 7 days. Now, the amazing thing about that one was that the Queen Mary sat alongside of us when we left. And we got into New York Harbor, the Queen Mary sat there before we did. She come across in 5 days. That was the fastest thing they had. We landed in New York, and we're put in Camp Kilmer. We went to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. From Camp Kilmer, I had a 30-day furlough, and I went home. And this is a picture of me, Helen and I, on our front lawn when I was home, when I returned from overseas. Now from there, I was sent, after my 30 days at home, I went to Atlantic City, what they call a rest home for everybody that was in the service. There's everybody that combat crews. And I was there for 30 days And they indoctrinated you and listened to lectures and told you that you must be psycho and things like that. From there, I was sent to Kieserfield, Mississippi, and was supposed to go through the entire B-24 school again that I went through before I went overseas. We couldn't believe that we were going to be sent right back to the same school we came from. But there I went. I was in school again. Same thing, same instructors, same stuff. Only this time, we didn't believe all they were telling us. So that led to a lot of trouble. And then one day, there had to be a list up on the board, volunteers for a crew to go to the South Pacific on B-24s. 200 of us volunteered to get out of Kiesterfield, Mississippi. And they sent us to Laredo, Texas, and put us right through gunnery school again. The same gunnery school that we went into, same course that we had once before. But after that, they decided they'd made a mistake and grounded all of us. And from there, they sent me to Chenowfield, Illinois, to a bigger mechanics school. Well, I stood in the line up there, and I didn't want to go to school, so I had a little paper in my hand that I've assigned to volunteer, and I ate it. Funny part of it is, about 5 fellas back behind me watched me eat mine. They ate theirs. Then they found out they couldn't send us to school if we didn't volunteer. So we laid around there for a while, and then they sent me to Boca Raton, Florida. Boca Raton Army Air Base, Florida. There they made me a clerk typist. My big fingers and me a clerk typist, and I couldn't spell. So after getting to Boca Raton Army Air Base, Helen came down, and on June 26th, 1945, at a 5 o'clock mass on a Friday afternoon, I married Helen Fish. Real hot weather. This is Helen and I on our wedding day in Boca Raton Army Air Base, Boca Raton, Florida. Now in August, we were married in June. In August, just about August 1st, they decided, a group of us, they'd get us out of where we were. And we were sent to Lubbock, Texas. Helen went along with me on a train, and we went to Lubbock, Texas. Now, to get a place to live in Lubbock, Texas was pretty hard. And so we found this place out in the country, and really what it was originally a chicken coop. And they converted it over to an apartment because the sandstorm killed the chickens. Now when it rained, you had pans all over creation catching the water. You had them on the bed, you had them every place. And it was so small that when you went to the john, where they had the john, you backed into this little room. You either went forward or you backed in, and when you backed, you sat right down quick, because it was right there. But this was our first home, a converted chicken coop in Lubbock, Texas. Now from here, we went to Tinkerfield, Oklahoma City, and I was discharged from the service. And we returned. After being discharged in Tinkerfield, Oklahoma City, I came home, and Helen and I came home, and we lived in the left side of this house here. That was our bedroom upstairs, and our living room is where the front door is. Now, while we lived there, Bill Jr. was born. He was born in February. And then in April, I decided the school wasn't worth going to and I didn't like what I was doing, and so I quit. That made a lot of people very unhappy, but in April of 1946, I quit going to Mechanics Institute. From there, I went to work in Shortsville for George McGurk as a mechanic. I worked for George about 30 days and then found out that John Rose was going out of business. So, this is the gas station that was on the corner. They sell cars there now. It's right next to the park. The bandstand is really off to the left a little. Now, this was a Sterling gas station. All we did is buy the material inside of it and rent by the gallon. Well, we were here for 3 months. And then the gas company boosted the price. And I decided, no way. They agreed that they wouldn't do it. And so I quit. I pulled up stakes and we left. You notice the bandstand on the left. This is another view of the garage. But while we were here for 3 months, it was in the summer, and Helen used to come down and she'd pump gas. Believe it or not, she'd wait on customers and she'd push the baby carriage down. Bill was a baby. And she just pushed the carriage down to the garage, she'd put it in the office, and she'd be out pumping gas. It's hard to believe that Helen would pump gas. But we ran this for 3 months. And then we quit. Bang, that sounds like me. I quit a lot. I forgot to show a picture of darling Willie. Billy, the little Billy. Here is he. He hasn't changed an awful lot, but this is a picture of little Will. Now at this time, we lived on the corner of Merrick Avenue and State Street in Bertha Bennett's house. Well, Shirley and Sonny Ciardi live there right now, but this is in front of the house is Helen and Bill Jr. Sitting in front of the house on State Street. This is at the time we were running the gas station when this was taken. After the gas station, while still living in Bertha Bennett's house, I got a job in Sampson Naval Base as a painter and joined the Painters Union. And while I was working there, Lynn was born. Lynn was expected in June and was born in September. Somebody did some awfully poor planning. And then the winter, I don't know, she was born in September. As I get back to Lynn, she was born in September. And I was still painting in Sampson. Well, the Sampson job closed in the fall. And Ike Moses and I, by that time, were good friends. We had worked together in Sampson and rode together. So we needed a job. So Ike and I worked one day on the thruway bridge in Victor, which they were building. I got sick pouring cement, and we never went back. So in the fall of 1948, we went to the East Rochester and hired out in the car shops run by the Merchants Dispatch Transportation. And that's in East Rochester. That was in the fall of 1948. Now in that year, we bought a house. Of course, this is a picture of Lynn as a baby. I forgot to mention that one. Now, in January of 48, we moved into the house which I am in right now. On 38 South Main, it had belonged to Estelle Randall, who was our senior teacher. She was an English teacher. Now this is a picture of Lynn as a baby in front of the house. You notice the broken down steps. This house hadn't been painted in 25 years. Everything was let go on it. I'll show a couple pictures of the house. Standing on the front porch of this house that we bought, this is one picture of it. It hadn't been lived in 5 years. The plaster was down in the center of every room. And so it took a little fixing to get it going. We did the downstairs first so we could move in and live in it. This is me standing on the front porch of this house. This is in 1948. Another view of the front of the house, taken a little different angle. Had great big doors on the front. The glass on the top was part of the door too. Now this is a picture from the back of the house. You see, there was the pool, we no longer had anything. There was nothing in the driveway. It was just plain dirt. And as you can see, as you get close, the paint spread. There wasn't much paint left on the house. And it was in pretty sad shape. As I said, it hadn't been painted in a long, long time. And it had chimneys on it. But it was home and it was ours. During this time, once we moved into this house after 48, Helen worked part-time in the post office for her Uncle Andy. Clara Smith was a clerk, and when Clara took days off, Helen took her job. Well, by the time things went on, and in 1958, I was laid off in the car shops. We had a recession, and the railroads had merged, and I was a foreman at the time, and I got bumped, and there was no jobs. So Helen, working in a post office, was supporting me once again. We did make some improvements on the house. As you see, it was painted. We painted it, fixed it up, put a porch on the back, put screens in it, a glassed-in porch. And, of course, I was unemployed, so that in April of 1959, I took a job in Renton, Washington with the Pacific Car and Foundry Company. They were building cars for the Merchants Dispatch Transportation, which I worked for years ago. They sent me out there as a chief inspector for 3 months to build refrigerator cars. This is myself and Ed Hogan, a man from Rochester, who has helped me as an inspector. They sent him out to help. This is the car that was built. And of course it said NRC. This is in Renton, Washington. Now this is the first time that I had been away from Helen and since we were married. And it was quite a change. I spent 3 months there, and then when that job gave out, Helen come out with the last 2 weeks I was there, and we took a train back to Rochester, back to home. Of course, I forgot to mention that before this time, and while I was still in the car shops, Paul was born. And this is Paul down in the middle, Paulie Wally, and Lynn on the left, Bill, and Paul. As time passed, these kids kept growing up. When I returned from Renton, Washington, I found a strong job in Stromberg Carlson in Rochester. I worked there 6 months, and they laid off the whole shift. So once again, I was unemployed. And in 1959, I got a job in Cordite in Macedon. And I worked there until 1965. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I quit. And when I left there, I went and worked 30 days for Westplex Corporation here in Manchester. Once again, it was a bad job. The man that hired me died 3 days before I went to work. And I wasn't welcome. And after 30 days, I quit, and Helen and I went to the World's Fair. Now this is a Christmas night scene. Helen loved to decorate, and she made all these things, and it doesn't show up as well as it should be. After I quit at Westplex, I went back to the car shops. I went to the dispatch shops in East Rochester, and in 1965, I worked there for 5 years. And in 1970, they closed the place down completely. And once again, I was unemployed. So after that, my father was real sick. He had leukemia real bad. And I kind of watched out for him. I had received a severance pay, so for a year I began to float. And at that time I started painting and doing carpenter work. And I did that until I completely retired. And in 1986, at 62 years of age, I started drawing railroad retirement unemployment. I'm cracking up again. That's what shows when you're this old. And during this time, I built houses, additions. Bill worked with me. Paul worked with me. And we built quite a few. Now this is another picture taken from across the street at Christmas time with Helen's decorating ability. This is the last year we ever decorated. This was the year before the Christmas of probably of 1986. 1987 wasn't the best year. Now this is a picture of Helen and I taken in later years. As you can see, we both have changed. And she had gray hair. I think with all the jobs I changed, I gave her the gray hair. But I put this on just to show you the things I've done during my lifetime. The jobs I've had and what I did. Picture taken down across from the village hall. They were planting a tree in Helen's memory because she was on the tree commission. And from left to right is Lynn, Bill, myself, and Paul. As you note, I'm the tall one in the family. Boy, they make me look like a dwarf. This was Lynn and Bill. And Paul and I. The four Ettingers. Now, Helen died in June of 1988. And I went to Myrtle Beach a few times with the crew, where we always went to. And this is what is left of the old gentleman. A little bit of a change since I was in high school and I was in the service.